Are you considering an outsourced finance team? If so, let's break down what they actually do. You probably already know that an outsourced finance team brings lots of advantages. Those advantages include, you don't have the hassle of hiring an internal finance team, you don't have the hassle of managing and training internal finance team, and normally an external outsourced finance team is cheaper than an internal finance team. And it also gives you the benefit of bringing different skills to your organisation. And by different skills, I mean some of those skills might be the more transactional levels, so bookkeeping skills, but it also can be skills right the way through from, from bookkeeper to accountant to financial controller through to finance director. So with an outsourced finance team, you can potentially take parts of all of those different skill sets. So that's really important for an organisation. But let's break down what they actually do on a day-to-day basis. So let's start with the daily transactions that an outsourced finance function might perform. Number one is making sure your books are reconciled daily. And what this means is, as transactions come in and out of your bank, they need to be allocated in your accounting software. So this is called daily bookkeeping or daily bank reconciliations. And this is to an extent automated if you're using systems like Xero or QuickBooks, but at the moment you still need a human eye to make sure that bookkeeping is done correctly and make sure that those costs and income lines are being allocated to the correct place. If your bank reconciliation is not done, then it just means that all your reports are not going to make sense because they're not going to be updated. And also, if you're looking to make any sort of real-time decisions on how you're performing, then that's not going to be up to date either. And for some firms as well, they want to see, what is their daily position, what are my daily sales, what are the costs that are coming through, and they want daily updates. And by having that sort of real-time update and that daily view, they can get that real insight into their organisation daily. But let's look at weekly now. So what sort of functions would an outsourced finance team do weekly? So common ones tend to be payment runs. So often supplier payment runs are done weekly. So an outsourced finance team will potentially prepare that payment run, so they look at all of the suppliers that are on the system that are going to need paying. They will check that those due dates to make sure they're actually due. They will potentially get them approved by the organisation. That might happen through a third-party piece of software. So they'll set up the payment run, they'll get it approved, and then that payment run will potentially be transmitted to the bank and the money paid to suppliers, and then remittances potentially sent out to suppliers. And that normally happens weekly. Again, it doesn't have to happen weekly. Some firms do it twice a month. Some people do it every couple of days to make sure the suppliers are paid on time. But weekly is probably the most common one there. So what does an outsourced finance team do on a monthly basis? Well, a common monthly transaction would be payroll. So normally a lot of organisations will run their payrolls on a monthly basis. So that would be dealt with by the outsourced finance team, and they normally would have a specialist payroll function that would do that. The next area on a monthly basis would be making sure that all the balance sheet reconciliations are done and the balance sheet is up to date to make sure that it's accurate and complete. And then once that is the case, then normally that's the time when the management reports will be run. So those management reports will be reports like cash flow forecast, profit and loss, balance sheet. It might include aged receivables and aged debtors, so looking at who owes you money, and also aged payables, so who the company owes money to. So all of those things will be looked at. They'll potentially be brought into a management pack. So the outsourced finance function will produce that pack, which will have all of those reports in, and then they will send that over to the management of the company. And what they may do in addition is they may produce a board pack as well. Typically that will be a more streamlined version of the management pack. Typically that's 2 or 3 pages long, and it's just got the pure detail that a board would need to make the key decisions. And often that's a combination of finance metrics and it's a combination of non-finance metrics. And what they're doing is they're bringing those together to really give quite a rich mix of what's going on in the business. So the board can make pretty much real-time decisions on what's going on and react to those decisions. So that's typically what will be included on the month-end or monthly process. Moving on to annual processes. So typically this would be things like your statutory accounts, they're done on an annual basis, and your corporation tax, that would be done annually. So once you get to the year end, the outsourced finance function will then move to complete those statutory accounts. And if you're doing regular management accounts, when you get to the statutory accounts, there should be no real surprises there because you've been looking at your figures throughout the course of the year. And most good accounting teams, then won't make a huge amount of adjustments when it gets to the statutory accounts, and therefore, management can clearly see, this is how we performed throughout the year. And then when it comes to the final accounts, the statutory accounts, they say, yep, that's what we're expecting. So there's no surprises. And also the outsourced finance team will do that in a timely way. You get 9 months in the UK from the point of your year end to when you have to submit your company accounts to Companies House. But a good outsourced finance team will do it within sort of 2 or 3 months, and therefore it's still relevant, it gets the job done, and you're not in that sort of last minute panic and trying to get things over the line. As well as the day-to-day and the monthly transactions that an outsourced finance team can perform, they can also provide strategic support, and that's normally in the form of an outsourced CFO. So that strategic support that an outsourced CFO will provide will normally be looking at the business in a highly critical way. They'll be looking at how it's performing, but also, and potentially more importantly, they'll be looking at what the potential performance is going to look like in the future. And they will be potentially challenging the current board on how that financial performance is going and making recommendations and suggestions on how that financial performance may be improved. So it's very much aligned with a strategic view of the business. At this level, it's very much the helicopter view of the business, looking down and saying, okay, how can we improve the financial performance of this business, and then coming up with recommendations and supporting the board to make sure that those plans are executed and delivered, and the financial performance of the business is improved. So that's the strategic element that an outsourced finance team can bring. I think it's also worth mentioning that all of those elements that we've talked about, all of these can potentially be flexed depending on the needs of the business. So, in some companies, they're going to be sort of very high-level needs at certain points at the time. So in some cases, their month end might be particularly heavy, and they might need more resource and more focus during a month-end process. Other companies, it might be more light touch at month-end, and therefore they don't need as much. And that's the beauty of having an outsourced finance team. You can potentially sort of flex that solution depending on what your business requires. So if you need more support, the outsourced finance function would step up and give you more support. If you need less, then it would rein that in. And obviously they're only charging you for the work that they're actually doing to deliver your accounts. So you're not paying for staff to frankly be sat there and not being productive or not being utilised. So that's the sort of key advantage of using an outsourced finance function as opposed to using an in-house finance team. So hopefully this has been useful. If it has, please like and subscribe to our channel.